Review, a daily program that delves into the latest and most significant economic stories. From stock markets to currency news, Business Review covers the most up-to-date stories in the global financial world.
In Cuba, its citizens continue to struggle with shortages of food, medicine, and basic products after the end of almost 4 months of quarantine. Long lines and crowds outside supermarkets mark the daily lives of Cubans who can barely afford to buy a few basic goods to take home. Cuba's economy has been hit hard by the pandemic. The World Bank has projected Latin America's will contract by 7.2% this year, but in Cuba's case, the economy was already fragile before the pandemic. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel said that the crisis is due to criminal new U.S. sanctions. Communist authorities have warned the Caribbean faces a near 10% drop in economic activity. Cuba's inefficient Soviet-style economy imports 2/3 of its food, half its fuel, and raw materials for just about everything else. Shortages ranging from food and fuel to personal hygiene products, medicine, agricultural inputs appeared a year ago and have become chronic. As shortages become more acute in the country, some Cubans fear a return to the special period when Cuba's economy went into free fall and there was widespread hunger.
The Trump administration plans to finalize regulations that will bar the U.S. government from buying goods or services from any company that uses products from 5 Chinese companies, including Huawei and Dahua. A U.S. government official said that as part of the plan, any company looking for a go-around would have to request a waiver as the Trump administration throws down an ultimatum: do business with the U.S. government or do business with the Chinese, but you can't do both. This is likely to have sweeping effects since any U.S. company that wants to sell high-tech devices to the U.S. government must certify that none of the components come from Huawei, Dahua, Hikvision, Hytera, and ZTE. That could impact the sale of surveillance equipment, cameras, two-way radios, and various mobile devices, including smartphones. This is just the latest step in raising tensions between the world's 2 biggest economies over geopolitical and trade issues. Many of these Chinese tech firms were already on U.S. blacklist, barring them from buying any components from U.S. companies without White House permission. Huawei did not respond to a request for comment. None of the other Chinese companies targeted could be reached. The ban is set to go into effect on August 13th.
The Eurogroup of Eurozone finance ministers elected Ireland's finance minister, Paschal Donohoe, as its new chairman, a job that will see him try to steer the group's coronavirus-damaged economies out of their worst recession. Dubbed prudent Pascal by some local medias, the Dubliner eschewed demands for bigger tax cuts and spending increases to deliver Ireland's first budget surplus in a decade. He's also strongly against a potential EU tax on digital firms. Donohoe was elected after 2 rounds of votes in which he defeated Spain's economy minister Nadia Calvino and his Luxembourg counterpart Pierre Gramena. He took over from the outgoing president Mario Centeno on July the 13th and will serve for 2.5 years. Despite criticism of its opacity and recently for its perceived irrelevance, the Eurogroup remains a powerful institution which played a key role during the financial crises of the last decade, ultimately helping to avoid the collapse of the common currency. Donohoe will have to steer the 19-nation Eurozone out of its worst-ever recession, with the European Commission estimating the bloc's economy could shrink by 8.7% this year before growing by 6.1% in 2021. He will have to mediate between a southern bloc, which supports a permanent watering down of the bloc's fiscal rules, and a northern front, led by the Netherlands, that prefers a quick return to Brussels' checks on national budgets.
Finance ministers of the Eurozone met via video conference on July 9th to vote on the next Eurogroup's presidency. Nadia Calvino of Spain, Pascal Donohoe of Ireland, and Pierre Gramegna of Luxembourg are in the running to chair meetings of the powerful Eurogroup of Eurozone finance ministers, with Eurozone officials saying it is likely to be a close race between the Spanish and the Irish contenders. The chairman sets the agenda at monthly meetings of finance ministers of the 19 countries sharing the euro and works out compromises on key policies. He or she will be instrumental to economic recovery policies after the coronavirus crisis. The Eurogroup president also chairs the board of the Eurozone Bailout Fund, which saved Greece, Ireland, Portugal, Spain and Cyprus from bankruptcy during the sovereign debt crisis. The job is for 2.5 years, a term that can be renewed.
Several hundred Airbus workers marched on July the 8th near Toulouse to protest against planned job cuts. Airbus plans to cut up to 15,000 jobs because of a drop in demand due to the pandemic, which has sharply lowered air travel and damaged airline finances. Airbus unions, joined by subcontractors and affiliated employees like Thales, marched through the company's headquarters to the Toulouse-Blagnac airport, carrying banners with slogans like "No to job layoffs." The European plane maker announced an 11% reduction in the workforce last week. Workers also protested in an hour-and-a-half strike, a first at Airbus since 2008, highlighting how the company's usually harmonious labor relations are frayed by the restructuring plan. Unions have declared a red line over forced cuts backed by the French government, which has deemed the plan excessive. CGT representative for Airbus Group, Xavier Petracci, said that some subcontractors are given a choice between termination or permanent salary cuts, arguing it was unfair because the crisis was not expected to be permanent. The French government-backed union calls to avoid compulsory job cuts at Airbus. French Junior Economy Minister Agnès Pannier urged Airbus to avoid compulsory redundancies. The number of workers demonstrating in Toulouse, where Airbus is a major employer, were far lower than the thousands who marched earlier alongside a runway and held a brief strike. Aerospace is responsible for 40% of industrial employment in the region, with 110,000 people across 1,100 large and small suppliers. Airbus itself employs 27,000 people.
Two of the biggest names on the British high street said they would cut more than 5,000 jobs after conceding that customers were unlikely to return to their old ways after the COVID-19 crisis upended retail. Health and beauty chains Boots, owned by Walgreens Boots Alliance, said it would cut 4,000 jobs and close 40 optician stores after shoppers' numbers plunged 85% in April at the height of the coronavirus lockdown. John Lewis, Middle England's favourite department store, said it would close 8 stores and lose a possible 1,300 jobs after it predicted that online sales would make up to 70% of its total sales this year and next, from 40% prior to the crisis. The world's sixth biggest economy shrank by 25% in March and April and could be heading for its biggest fall in 300 years in 2020, with the unemployment rate on course to more than double to about 10%, according to official projections. Already, thousands of job losses have been announced by the menswear shop TM Lewin, department stores Harrods and Debenhams, fashion stores Oasis, Warehouse and Arcadia, and the DIY outfit Travis Perkins. Most have warned that a recession is looming, and they are cutting numbers now before demand drops even further. The news of the latest job losses will come as a blow to Finance Minister Rishi Sunak, who announced a plan to pay employers £1,000 for every number of staff they take back from the government-supported furlough scheme.
Business Review, your daily source for the most critical stories in the financial world. Tune in next time for the latest financial news impacting the world economy.